Hi guys, Celestia here. This is going to be part 5 of the story of Fig. This particular part is called Death of the Seer. Now at the end of part 4, after much commotion at Falar's house with Cecilia, there's a knock at the door, and one of the elders, Ryo, is there to tell Falar that he needs to come with him because their seer has passed. Elves don't normally make a big deal about death. Death is a part of life. Everything dies in its time. However, the death of Doric has caught everyone by surprise. And Glyneth said, that's crazy. I just saw her. And he says, you just saw her? She said, yes. Rowan came and said that Doric wanted to see Cecilia. And so I took her to see Doric. He said, I didn't know anything about this. She said, well, I really didn't have a chance to tell you. He said, what? She said, with everything that's happened. He said, why did she want to see her? She said, I have no idea. She said, well, we'll have to wait and ask Cecilia when she wakes up. He said, I don't understand what's going on with her. He says, it's very bizarre. He says, he said, I don't know. He said, I don't want to put this to words because he said the crazy thoughts are going through my head and he said, and I don't like them. Fig said that she would stay with Cecilia since both Glyneth and Falar would have to go to see to Doric. Now normally, wood elves bury their dead. They have a sacred grove and they are buried beneath the ground because they feel that they go back into the earth and help with the forest. However, Doric made it very clear that she didn't want that. She made it very clear that she didn't want to be put into the ground, that was just something that was repugnant to her. Said, despite the fact that that's the way we do things, that's not the way I want it. If anything ever happens to me. And Falar can remember this quite clearly. Glyneth goes and gathers up her things to help with the purification of the body. And he sends Ryo to gather the elves together, tell them what's happened, and make sure that everything is done according to what Doric wanted. Now, Doric came from a very long line of seers. Her mother was a seer, her grandmother was a seer. Normally, that ability in her family was passed down from mother to daughter. However, Doric never found a mate, and so there would be no seer after her. Not that the clan really needed a seer. It was nice to have, of course, for just in case, you know. But they were at peace. Nothing was happening. And yet Falar has this thing in the back of his mind as to what Cecilia was saying about they're killing them. You have to listen to me. And Glyneth sees him kind of fading in and out, and she said, You're thinking about Cecilia, aren't you? He said, yes, of course. He said, I don't understand why she would want to see Cecilia. She said, maybe she thought she could help her. She said, that's the only thing that I could think of at the time. Maybe she thought that she would be able to somehow pick something up, or, you know how Doric was with things like that. Again, she's like Fig, with the laying of hands, and she could, read people. Maybe she thought she could help her. He said, but what about all of this stuff that Cecilia was saying? She says, I don't know, Philhar. I don't. He says, oh, Glynneth, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my dear. Please forgive me. He said, I have to tell you that this has me so shaken that everything that's happened with finding Cecilia and worrying about, what's going on with her, and then this business with Elphinor and having to find another elder. He said, there's so much going on. He was like, this is just one last thing that I really don't need. She said, none of us do, Philhar. None of us want to deal with death. None of us want to think about death. That's one of the perks of being a race that lives so long, is that death is so far in the future that we don't really need to worry about it. He said, but why? Why was Dorics so insistent on not being buried in the sacred grove? He said, that's another thing I don't understand. She said, we'll never know. They crossed the suspension bridge from one part of the tree to the other in the area where Doric lived with her two attendants, Rowan and Mead. They go to knock on the door, and the door opens, and there, standing there, is Rowan, puffy face, tears rolling down her cheeks, eyes red. She said, I'm worried about Mead. She won't leave her. She said she knows she's not there anymore, but she won't leave her. You have to help me. She said, I'm afraid I'm going to lose her too. She said, Philhar, Glynneth, I can't lose her too. He says, well, we'll deal with Mead. He said, but you need to get things prepared so that Glynneth can cleanse and wash her body to get her ready for her funeral. She says, you're not going to bury her. You're not going to bury her, right? She says, no. He says, I've sent Ryo to take care of seeing to the pyre. He says, please just calm yourself. He says, you're not doing yourself any good. You're just going to make yourself sick. She said, okay. Glynneth said, come along, darling. She said, we'll go make some tea. She said, and then we'll see to setting up an area where we can take care of Doric. Come with me. She puts her arm around her and she just sobs. Philhar dreads going into Doric's chamber, because he knows that Mead is in there. But he knows he has to. He is chief. These are the types of things that a chief deals with, despite the fact of not really wanting to. He goes in, and there's Mead, sitting on the floor beside the bed. Her arms like this, on the side of the bed. She's sobbing. She's muttering. Philhar can't make out what she's saying. She's muttering. He says, now Mead. He says, you know Doric wouldn't want you to carry on so. She says, but I loved her like a sister. And now she's gone. He said, but you know she wouldn't want you to carry on like this. You know that. She'd be very angry with you. She almost snaps out of this trance that she was in. And she's like, oh, you're so right. Oh, she would be raking me over the coals right now. She said, I can hear her scorning at me, yelling and screaming at me, telling me to stop, that I needed to go on with life. He said, Glynneth is here. She's with Rowan. They're making tea. He says, why don't you go and help them set up so that we can get her prepared for her final journey. He said, but before you go, he said, was she ill? No. Mead said, no. She said, I swear the woman's never been sick a day in her life. She said, did you get so much as a hangnail? She said, I don't understand this, Philhar. Why is this happening? She said, I hate to even say this, because I really like the girl, but could she have done something? He said, no, I don't think so. He said, I don't know what's going on. He said, but we'll find out. He says, you have my word, we'll find out what's going on. She said, all right. So she leaves. Pilar stands there and he's like, oh, Doric, you caused such a mess. He said, I know this wasn't your intention. He said, and I hope you can hear me, my friend. He said, but we're really in it now. He said, with Cecilia showing up like this and now you passing, he said, of course, everybody and Elfinor, saying that she was going to harm her. And he said, you've really stirred things up. Just made things so much worse. He said, oh, listen to me. Being so selfish. He said, oh, I'm so sorry, my friend. I'm so sorry. Big tear down his face. He said, I wish you were here to tell me what happened. I wish you were here to tell me what's going to happen. He said, I'll miss our talks. He said, I know you really didn't like being Seer. He said, I know that you felt it was your duty. He said, but duties, just like being chief, are not always the easiest things to handle. He said, but we're going to see you off in the way that you wished it. He said, I don't understand your aversion to being buried in the ground, but I respect it. Gwyneth said, we're ready for her, from the doorway. He picks her up and carries her out, and they set a table up by the fire. He can smell the purification herbs. He lays her down. He said, I'm not going to stay. Gwyneth says, that's fine. He said, you might want to check on Cecilia. Make sure that the guard is still there because people are going to wonder. They're going to point fingers. He said, that's not going to happen. He said, I don't know why this girl is here. He said, but she is not the cause of this. She's not the cause of any of this. So he leaves. The ladies undress her. They wash her hair. They style it in a way that she liked while it was still wet. Put flowers in it and herbs. They dressed her in a simple cotton gown. And after bathing her, of course. This whole time, Gwyneth is looking for signs of trauma. Anything that could give them a hint as to what happened. She finds nothing. What Ryo thought looked like pain was not pain, it was shock. Plain and simple shock. I can't believe I'm going to die. She was older. She was one of the oldest members of the clan. But knowing that you're going to die can't be an easy thing. It was as if she foresaw her own death. Gwyneth, of course, can't help but wonder what happened between Cecilia and Doric. They were in the room together, alone. And Doric brought Cecilia out and she was fine. She didn't look like anything unforetold had happened. Cecilia was slightly out of it at the time. She didn't really think anything of it. All these thoughts are going through her head just like they are through Pilar's head. Could this sweet young woman possibly have caused Doric's death? Rowan said, I know what you're thinking. She said, but I spoke to Doric. She said, and she wanted me to know that she tried to help Cecilia. She tried to help the girl. And she couldn't break through. She couldn't. Her mind is so messed up and so askew and so fragmented that there was nothing she could grab onto. She said she was actually surprised that Fig could even determine her name. And Gwyneth said, well, do you blame me for thinking these things? She said, no, of course not. Of course not. So, Doric was going to be carried to where the pyre was going to be. But she wasn't going to be put on the pyre. She was going to be put on a platform for viewing, like what humans do at a funeral. This way that members of the clan could come and give her tokens of appreciation, tokens of love, prayers, flowers, gifts. So she was taken from the house. And it was amazing how quickly the platform had been built. They were still digging the pit for the pyre. But they knew that the platform was more important, as it would be where she would rest. And it was beautiful. The platform was beautiful. Covered with fresh moss, beautiful flowers that are intertwined with beautiful vines. And the men that came to take her from her home, sent by Falar, they had a pallet, a stretcher. They carefully covered her and bore her to her pallet, to her platform. The forest was silent when she was laid there. It was almost as if Gren was grieving with all of them. There were no birds singing. There were no animals rustling around. Nothing. To put it quite bluntly, it was dead silent. It was quite eerie, actually. After she was rested on the platform, Gwyneth made her way to the Great Hall to make sure that the feast was underway. The cooking of the feast was underway. And found out that the hunters had bagged 2 wild boars, so they were going to have that along with chicken and fish and duck. Vegetables that were her favorite. The whole Great Hall was going to be decorated. There was a stage or a platform built where people could deliver their eulogies, their remembrances. Falar would be last. So, things came to a sudden halt for poor Doric. We may never know why. We may never know what transpired between she and Cecilia. We may not know until Cecilia wakes up, and even if she remembers. So, that is the end of part 5, my friends. Part 6 will be the funeral. and the aftermath of. So if you're new to my channel and you've stumbled across this and wondered what this crazy woman is doing telling some crazy story, well, that's what I'm doing. I'm telling a story. A story that comes to me from my beautiful girl Fig, who's sitting over there watching me very intently. And it just keeps coming. So stay tuned for part 6. Stay tuned for some interesting things to come. Some good things, some not so good things. We haven't heard the last of Elthanor. She's going to try and, of course, stir the pot against Cecilia, which I'm sure you gathered by now. So, until we get together the next time, stay calm, relax, and love your dollies.